Billy Joe Saunders is back in the news, and he's been in the news, two sides of the newspaper, as we used to say. One of them at the front of the newspaper, where you get into the sort of dodgier news stories, and he's often been in the back pages as well because he's genuinely talented boxer. But Billy Joe, well, he even made the video pages of the news sites this week because it was, I suppose, his what was described by the Mail as a foul-mounted rant at police.
Yeah, there's a lot of expletives in the video, which we have for people to see. But basically, Billy Joe Saunders was sentenced last week after being convicted of hare-coursing, and he's been banned from keeping dogs. Essentially, this all happened last October. Police pulled him over in Lincolnshire in England, which is actually known as an area for hare-coursing. And there were 2 dogs in the back of the car. There was more people in the car than should have been. And when they searched the car, they found paraphernalia used for hare-coursing, which is using dogs to chase and kill hares. And there was also video footage of this happening on Billy Joe's phone, but he wasn't happy with police and he went on an absolute rant, I think, to put it lightly.
Yeah. And what did he say, Eimear?
Are we allowed to say? Yeah. He basically told the police officer to go bend your mother over and
what?
Are we allowed to say?
Of course you are. Of course you are.
I'm so innocent.
Go on.
Why are you taking pleasure out of me saying it? He said, go bend your mother over and fuck her, you cunt.
Yes.
And then he said, fuck your mother. And then he basically just kept going, fuck you, you prick, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But it didn't help him in the end. So he was sentenced last week. I think he was banned from keeping dogs for 5 years. And also must do 60 hours of unpaid for labour. And then he had other co-accused one was banned for 10 years. But yeah, the police are basically putting out warnings about that and, saying that they were caught and banged to rights because of all of the evidence in the car. So it didn't matter what he said to them, really.
No, I mean, it's a deprivation order or something like that. Very unusual. We don't have an equivalent charge there.
No.
Now, the video, obviously, the police ultimately released it, and it's around the world. But so, like Billy Joe, it's not the first time he's appeared in the Sunday World, obviously.
No.
Billy Joe actually has communicated with Nicola a bit here and there, and a lot of what we've written about him are basically his very public defences of Daniel Kinahan, because people will remember at the time when MTK Global were starting to become a big force in the world of boxing, that they started signing up these boxers, and Billy Joe was the first real big name that they got. I mean, he was a world champion. I mean,
yeah, he was lightweight and super lightweight champion.
Yeah, he'd been the WBO middleweight champion.
Yeah.
I think for in 2015.
Yeah.
So before that, MTK had really focused on signing Irish boxers. Some of them, the former Olympic boxers, other guys like, that maybe wouldn't have had that profile. But Billy Joe was the first one that was really a world-class boxing champion already. And that was their first move into that really big world. And as a result, Billy Joe Saunders became a really good pal of Daniel Kinahan's. He's from a Romany background. So even though there was a famous fight against Andy Lee, the Irish boxer is also from an Irish travelling background. And it was, I think, described as the first traveller world championship fight. But Billy Joe would have been from what's described as English gypsies background, the Romany backgrounds, but huge interactions with the travelling community. And I suppose another reason he came to our attention was because when Tyson Fury was signed up by MTK, and you probably don't remember that bit, the boxing bit of that at the time, but Tyson Fury he'd been a champion, and then he'd kind of
gone to seed. Oh, I do remember that because he let himself go.
Yeah, I mean, he really did. He put on a huge amount of weight, but I mean, he certainly suffered from a lot of mental illness in at that time. So it was a really heavy situation he was in, and he's spoken about it publicly.
Yeah.
And at that stage, the Kinahans were still based in Spain, and they put Daniel Kinahan arranged for Tyson Fury to move to Spain. And I think people had written Tyson Fury off and MTK, with the help of Daniel Kinahan, put him on this kind of fitness program. And he started shooting videos as he went around losing weight, but living with Billy Joe Saunders at the time in this villa. And amazingly, he came back.
Yeah. And I think that's why, isn't it, these boxers are always so loyal to Daniel Kinahan, because he really did, put the time and effort into them and the money. But, I suppose I don't know too much about boxing because it's actually middle and super middleweight champion, not lightweight. No. But you do hear that, like, there's obviously these people, it's all about the deals and it's all about the money they can make from them, whereas Daniel Kinahan seemed to actually take the time to invest in them personally, and then in turn they became super loyal. But obviously we all know where the money was really coming from as well, from Daniel Kinahan, so you can kind of understand that sense. But he did kind of constantly defend him and not really want to listen to the facts that were coming out about Daniel Kinahan.
No, because he certainly didn't want to he didn't take on board the Irish media's opinion. Let's put it that way. But it's hard to kind of look back in a way and think, it was still a kind of an opinion at that stage. So there'd be something written about Daniel Kinahan and involved in the drugs business. And what would happen, you get a number of boxers would start coming out and publicly defending him. And at that point, you really could, like, you could say he had no convictions and he's never been, arrested, he's never been convicted of any serious offence in court, and this is all just rumour and speculation. Because the international media at that point had very little interest in the Kinahan cartel. They were aware of it and they would repeat some of it, but really, they were more interested in the boxing, that they could do that. And look, there's always the belief that Daniel Kinahan would, encourage or arrange, or whatever way you want to put it, arrange for these guys to say stuff. And of course, Billy Joe Saunders did contact Nicola personally and, tried to suggest that she could interview Daniel Kinahan. I mean, this is all, I suppose, around before the Regency.
Yeah.
But the Regency changed things a bit, but it didn't change Daniel Kinahan's rise in the boxing, and he continued to represent Billy Joe. Billy Joe Saunders would always defend him publicly.
Yeah, because even in 2020, was it? He threatened to quit boxing over what he alleged were claims about Daniel Kinahan in the media. So, I suppose it's only really been since the sanctions were announced. Was that around that time, and that some of the more well-known people in the boxing world have kind of distanced themselves from Kinahan? But, it was well after the Regency that he was still defending him.
Oh, totally. He was one of the prime defenders. I mean, there was a couple of others, but he was probably the main person. And there's obviously Daniel Kinahan, continued to do the business for him, because Billy Joe Saunders fought Canelo Alvarez, who's probably regarded as the greatest pound for pound fighter in the world at the time. So it was a huge, huge fight. I don't know how much money was made, but they were talking about a 50 million euro fight, I think. So this is one of the moments where MTK really were reaching the full pinnacle, because they'd obviously gone through the Irish boxers, and then they'd had some success in Europe. But to get into that European market, or to get into that US market, and the Mexican boxers are, in that division in particular. I mean, that's probably the most highly contested, maybe the most highly watched division. Obviously, the heavyweights are there, but that's hugely, probably the very prestigious sort of clash. And after that, Saunders, after that clash was arranged, he said, big thank you, obviously, to MTK Global, and also to my advisor, Daniel, as well, because without him, this fight wouldn't have happened. And that was in a video like Tyson Fury.
What year was that?
But that was 2021.
Yeah.
And he was the one who secured it over the line and gave me that bit of advice to say yay or nay and what I should do. So thank you very much.
Yeah. It was the following year then, wasn't it, that the sanctions were announced by the US in relation to Daniel and his father and his brother?
It was.
2022. and Billy Joe, he doesn't speak out about it as much anymore now.
Well, he doesn't, because he's not on social media in the way he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was certainly very, very prominent. And he did do a lot of podcasts as well, speaking about Daniel Kinahan. Because in the run-up to the sanctions, there was a second sort of wave of publicity where a lot, even in that year, as MTK really started hitting the big time, there was a load of them came out. And some of it seemed coordinated. Some of them, maybe they would say it wasn't, but they were posing for pictures with him in Dubai. They were, some of them were starting to do podcasts. People, like John O'Carroll were doing videos where they were talking about him. Other guys were putting up pictures with quotes. Now, on one occasion, Saunders did an interview with the Pug and Cop podcast hosted by Mike Coppinger. So he'd be well known to people who know the history of this boxing stuff, I suppose. And he said Daniel Kinahan is a very personal good friend of mine. He has done every single world fight for me. He's done the deal. And then he also went on about how, well, he's that same thing that they always said, he had no convictions. And he says, he described Daniel Kinahan as a very clever businessman. And he says, if somebody takes a shit on in a Dublin street in Ireland, it's Daniel Kinahan. The man has done so much for me and I owe him a lot. I trust him 100%. I trust him so much that I would pull my heart out of my body and give it to him to mind. He's a good man. He looks after a lot of people. He looks after cancer patients and people who have nowhere to live. He feeds people. People should welcome him into the game. With him in the game, fighters will be a lot better off. I'm ever so grateful.
Yeah. I suppose he's spoken like someone who didn't live in Dublin during the years of the feud and seen all the what happened then, and obviously the massive drug epidemic that's coming from those drug gangs.
Now, Billy Joe is one of those guys that has been in a lot of controversies in of itself.
Yeah.
So maybe he has a particular view of the media, because another time then when I think it was a program on RT about the feud, he would tweet underneath it. I think he said, he'd respond to stuff like that. And on another occasion, he said, there's a lot of bad stigma about him, Daniel Kinahan. There's a 20-year investigation that he has murdered 20 people. But if he did, why isn't he in prison? If anything happens in his home, then he gets the blame. Now, at the time, Saunders himself, he'd run into a couple of issues. There was one infamous video, I suppose, where he was in a Rolls Royce and he'd agreed for it to be filmed, obviously.
Yeah, he's demonstrated how to hit a woman on the chin.
Yeah.
If she was, and in his quote, if she's giving you mouth, is what he said.
Yeah.
So he had his boxing license temporarily suspended as a result of that. And because obviously the implications was that he was seeing to advocate for domestic violence. So, he did get himself into trouble for that. But he's obviously still around the boxing world, because I think there's a comeback. He's announced a comeback this year. He's announced,
I don't know if the date has been settled.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, he's still a young man, and there's no doubt about that Billy Joe Saunders was a world champion and a tough fighter and talented fighter. But he doesn't... It's an interesting sort of snapshot of the history of how the Kinahans are regarded, because we've seen again BBC Northern Ireland doing a really good documentary mentioning the Kinahans that'll go around, and that follows on the one from last year. There's stories now weekly nearly about mentioning the Kinahan cartel in places like the Daily Mail.
Yeah, there was actually a big read. I think a lot of it was taken from what Nicola's written, but on the Daily Mail, all about the family tree of the Kinahans and Christy Senior in particular, Daniel's father. But what I find funny as well is about the boxing, despite the constant attempts to sports wash his reputation and these big boxers defending him, I think the shout out from Tyson Fury when that big fight was arranged is what that sparked a lot of actual backlash in the media. People speaking out against, did they not realise who this person is? Because they say that I'm off the phone to Daniel, this big fight is arranged, and that actually kind of highlighted his links to boxing and then kind of put the spotlight back on Daniel Kinahan in terms of his criminal activities. So it hasn't always helped him either, these boxers speaking out against him.
No, I mean...
about form, sorry.
Yeah, that sparked the backlash, and I think Leo Varadkar Twitter at the time, spoken to Dáil about it, and it was kind of seen as crossing this Rubicon. But yeah, it's those days are gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the world has now caught up with the idea that Daniel Kinahan could ever re-emerge as somebody with just a shady reputation.
Yeah.
Is long gone.
Of course. And even like when Billy Joe was talking rightly about how he had no convictions and how there's a 20-year investigation, like now they are actually trying to get him back here.
Yeah.
And do have things to put to him. So I suppose that investigation has come to something, and he has been, while he has no convictions, he has been mentioned by Gardaí in the High Court over the years as being the leader of the gang. So we'll see. I suppose
they're seeking to
yeah.
You know, they sent a file to the DPP, and
yeah.
Sure, look, we still await that, and we'll no doubt come back to all of that the second we have any news.
Yeah, it won't be the last time Daniel's mentioned.
No.
Or Billy Joe, probably.
No. Okay, thanks, Eimear.
Thanks, Niall.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.